Mhm.
So
No,
should
no, no.
I
I
ask
mean,
you a question again? Maybe different one.
yeah. No, we should be seeing me, Kenji, and Shutter.
Oh, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't
something
have the video. I wouldn't have the video. So
Yeah,
right,
just
right. Okay.
so
just
like
me
only
and
two is enough. And I will be like, yeah, the next year, like three. Like
Yeah, something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
OK。カールさん、こんにちは。そう、
no,
一
no,
つ
no. I
質
mean,
問が上がっているので、聞きたいんですけども、先に日本語で聞
yeah.
きますね。
No, we should be seeing me,
3
Kenji, and Shutter.
ヶ月に滞在するっていうことで、ホームシックはありませんでしたかっていう質問がありました。
Oh, but
One
I wouldn't have
audience
the
asked
video.
you
I wouldn't have
if
the
you
video.
have
So
ever had homesick
Right, right. Okay.
during
So
3 months
like
here.
only two is enough. And I will be like,
Yeah,
the
no,
next
I
year,
actually
like
feel
three.
like I
Like
felt the reverse. Yeah, something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't want to go
Okay.
home yet.
カールさん、こんにちは。
So it's the
そう、
opposite
一
of
つ質問が上がっているの
but
で、
in
聞き
relation
たい
to
んですけ
that,
ども、先に日本語で聞き
yeah,
ま
I've
すね。
never felt we should be seeing distant from my friends and
まあ、
family in
3
the
ヶ月
Philippines
に
because
滞
we
在
talk
するっ
every
ていうこ
day
とで、
on
ホーム
social
シックはあ
media.
りませんでしたかっていう質問がありました。
So in
Oh,
that
but
One
I
regard,
wouldn't
audience
have the
asked
video.
you
I didn't really
if
get
you
the
have
chance
ever
to
had
visit them because I've never been
homesick
there.
during
Okay.
during
So
3 months
like
here.
only two is enough. And I はい、ホームシックに関しては、実はなりませんでしたっていうよりも、その反対で、いまだにフィリピンに帰りたいと思っていないというか、もう少し日本にいたい気持ちです。で、それは同時に、SNS とかを使って家族とか友人と、毎日のようにコンタクトが取れるので、距離を実際にある距離を感じていなかった
No,
next
I
year,
actually
like
feel
three
like
という
I
こと
felt
で、
the reverse.
ホームシックは感じていませんでしたということです。
I don't want to go home.
OK。ありがとうございます。Thank you, Carl.
Thank you for the question. Hey, that was
Yeah.
pretty good. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll try walking so we can test another location. Embarrassment. Things I do for art. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a different part of the Tower of the Sun. The front part is about the face that is optimistic and looking towards the future. That's why it's painted gold. Oh, there's a festival already. Okay. I guess I will see the ramen festival. Is it a time for a mukbang? Okay, so Expo 70 was known for its futuristic architecture. It was also the biggest expression of what is known as metabolist architecture, which is a type of an architectural style that mimics organic growth. So it's a little modular, but using modern materials. But the centerpiece of the festival was this Tower of the Sun, which was inspired not by modernity, but by the earliest periods of Japanese history, the Jomon period and its sculpture. So it kind of, the idea was that Taro Okamoto's idea was that we shouldn't be consumed by this pursuit of modernity, but we should not forget the humanity that has been there all along. That's why it looks a little primitive in a way, or naive. And what's important, another important thing about this, which I will show you, and once I find a vantage point, is the back of the sculpture. So the sculpture has several faces. And for me, the most interesting part is the back. There. Because the back is an angry face. Black and it's angry. And what it represents is its anger towards the cruelty of man against each other. And this is, of course, a reference to the previous World War that just finished and Japan's role in it, and also the experience of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which are very near. So it's a black face. And I feel like it's this acknowledgement of the optimism for the future, but also the making a stand against cruelty of the past. That's very interesting. Especially in, usually in World Expos are a very diplomatic exercise where you present, the best face of the country and you hide the ugliness. And that was documented in my research that there were some censorship that went on in the crafting of the exhibition. But here, in the very centerpiece, it acknowledges that. So I find that very interesting. And I think it's one of the things I admire about the expo, that in its main iconic sculpture, there was room for this kind of critical side. And in fact, there was a very prominent anti-expo sentiment and movement during that time. And there was an instance where a student actually took over the face of the Tower of the Sun and hijacked it and did not get down from it. And it was handled quite carefully by the police, but eventually, it was a test of the security. If they will harm the student, if they will inflict violence in the very center of the expo, or if they will let it run. Anyway, so that was a very interesting expo. Anyway, how does this look on camera? Is my audio still okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I'll try walking to a different part. Edit again to this mode. Okay, we're back to walking mode. I'm so distracted by this ramen expo. I know what I'm gonna eat. Okay, so we are heading to, oh shit, did I go to the right place? To the Expo 70 Pavilion. Okay, maybe I should. Should I walk across the field? Okay, I'll do that. I think the landscape with the trees is nice. Okay, so do you have any questions? I think the questions will happen here when I'm walking in between. Kubaw X, kamusta ang video ko dyan?
Hi, video is good.
Okay, thank you.
Japan internet is very fast.
Okay. Oh no. And so I'm walking to the Expo 70 Pavilion. The third stop. Meanwhile, I guess you can see the garden. That will be our fourth stop later. Is this a better angle? Me from the side or you from the front? Which is better when I'm walking? Like this? Okay. Okay, so now we've arrived at the Expo 70 Pavilion. Okay, this is a good spot for it. So let me just set up. Sure. Of course. Why not? See that? My parkour is amazing. Okay, wait, I think I should be farther so we can see the whole thing. Okay. I'll retrieve it later. I love it. Thank you. I should release it on Instagram as a okay. Now we can see the pavilion. Me. This is so hard. Yay. Okay. Okay, so we're at the framing is so annoying. Sorry. Okay, so we're at the Expo 70 Pavilion. This used to be the pavilion of the Japan Steel Federation. And early on, it was decided that it will not be demolished, but it will be retained. So in 2010, and during the 40th anniversary of the expo, they unveiled the newly refurbished steel pavilion as the Expo 70 Pavilion. So it's a museum which houses all these artifacts and exhibits about the Expo 70. and they preserved the original character of the pavilion. The concept of the pavilion was Song of Iron. So there were sculptures which were actually musical instruments made of metal, and the centerpiece was the Space Theater. They called it the Space Theater, which was essentially a multimedia installation, immersive experience. And that kind of media-driven art installation was very prominently done in the expo. And I guess with the theme of being future-oriented and technologically oriented, that kind of art was encouraged to represent um, a future-oriented art making in Japan. One of the more prominent exponents was the Gutai Art Group, which is based in Osaka. And they held a performance at the expo. Anyway, something like that. I'll fix it. So I could say, okay, in this expo, at the pavilion, so we can't film inside, but I can show you in my slides. I made one of my exhibition works here. Inside the pavilion, the expo pavilion, there's a medal making machine, a medal stamping machine that you can only find here. And it has commemorative sige, pwedeng pahanap nung slide testing natin.
Yes, yes.
Yung coins na may mga rally sa likod. After pa yata.
Kaya pa, sabi niya kahapon, mag-ano siya. Kung hanggat hindi siya nagbibigay ng screenshot, sabi, wala. Sure.
Ayan, yung may coins. Ayan. Ayan, okay. Yes, so I made one of my exhibition works. This is a set of 3 coins called To Mint a Memory. So sige, next slide, please. So I manufactured it here using a medal making machine at the expo. And essentially it's a souvenir, but I wanted to use souvenirs as a motif in my exhibition because I feel that souvenirs are a kind of expo legacy also. The idea that you can take something, an image or a memory, a concrete memory from an event. And usually with souvenirs, it's something cute, it's something positive, something innocent or pretty. But I feel like in remembering the past, it's important to never forget these episodes which demand our urgent attention even in the present. So there were 3 coin options in the booth, and I made 3 coins. And on each coin I imprinted a martial law slogan, a martial law era slogan. So again, next slide. Next. Yeah. Okay, so the first one, I imprinted Marcos Hitler Dictador Tuta, which means Marcos Hitler Dictator Lapdog. I chose the red coin for it because red was the official color both of Marcos and of the resistance movement. that rebelled against this dictatorship. So you can see here that it was a chant or a slogan that was used during the 1970s itself. And it's an important slogan because it essentially unveils the truth about the dictatorship. Because what Marcos did was he framed his dictatorship as number one, as constitutional. He called it constitutional authoritarianism, meaning it was legal and correct. And second, he framed it as a democracy. In fact, um, he even authored, quote unquote, authored a book called Today's Revolution: Democracy. Um, so essentially, he was taking the idea of himself being a revolutionary and the revolution being a democratic society and the dictatorship, the new society, being a democratic society. So of course, this was not true because it was a very repressive society. And this slogan unveils that democratic propaganda as false. And so throughout the years, this has been a consistent slogan and it's still being used until this day. Next, the next coin is called Imelda Iselda. It means jail Imelda. So this slogan became popular after 2018, after Imelda Marcos was finally in a rare conviction. She was convicted for 7 counts of graft, which would amount for like 42 years at least in jail. But because of her power, she was never arrested until now. She remains free. The Philippine National Police said that she was not arrested because of humanitarian grounds, because she's old. But there are many political prisoners in the Philippines who are aging, who even died in prison and were not given the same consideration. Um, so, so obviously there's a power play there. Yeah, so that's the story of this second coin. The next coin, the last one is called No Climate Justice under Marcos. So this is a recent one. This refers to the administration of Ferdinand Marcos Jr., our current president, the son of Ferdinand and Imelda. So Ferdinand Marcos Jr., or Bongbong, projected himself as a green candidate, as someone who cared about climate justice. He usually promoted the windmills at Ilocos Norte as a kind of sustainable energy, as proof of his own, environmental inclination. But this is not true because his family is, the worst, has the worst scorecard in the environment. The Philippines forests were decimated under his father's rule, and of course, he does not claim accountability for any of martial law era repression. So, yeah. So, so this is very new. So together, the 3 coins show a continuity of resistance against the Marcos family and against dictatorship through the years, through the decades. And I feel like that is an important memory that we should take away, even from something when we're remembering the 70s onwards. Yeah. So I found it to be an interesting intersection between a medal machine from 2023 that remembers something from 1970, and me as an activist in 2023 remembering things that happened from the 70s onward. Eklat, yun na yun, check. Do you have any questions for me?
No, this is like this. Next to cow, can like who is doing the Q? Can you put the title of me, Shotaro Ikeda, translator, like interpreter, Shotaro Ikeda, next to the under the cow's video? Is that possible? Video. Is that possible? Yeah.
Sure, we can do that. It's the wrong name, but okay. But it will look something like that. Sige, i-check ko na lang mamaya yung ano.
No, but
Ah.
so I'm saying that yes. So, but at the cow's video, because we will share the video.
Okay. So Erickson, most likely tomorrow, Shotaro and I will be together. So instead of just me on my video, should be Carl Castro with Shotaro Ikeda.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay. So what you're seeing is the garden and the water feature. And we're walking on our way to the National Museum of Ethnology. Can we try a sample
民
question?
泊に向かって歩いています。
Kubo X,
The
do we have a question? Uh-oh. Is Kubo X still there? Oh, wait, I can't pass here. Holy crap. Okay. I'll go another way. Crap, going to the Minpaku is hard. The
今、民泊に向かっているのですが、ちょっと行き方が。
Okay. So it's gonna be a while. It's gonna be a long way. So
なんかその間に、質問を受け付け
Hi, while you're asking questions, okay lang kunwari mag hands up while you were walking or touring. If someone asks a question, we can accommodate while
万博は、そう、国っていう、国家とか、科学、芸術、それらを、帝国主義の名の下で象徴、帝国主義に貫かれたそういうコンセプトによって成り立っています。
And the field we know as science today, we associate it with objectivity, with rationality, but for a long time, it was associated with being colonial and with proving the superiority of the Caucasian race over other peoples and cultures.
はい。で、科学っていうのは今、客観的なものとして、信じられていますが、もともとは長い間、この植民地主義として、西洋コーカシアン、西洋人が、いかに他の民族に対して優れているかとか、そういう視点のもとに、そういう視点に基づいて、進歩してきたものです。
Okay, and in many expositions and even world expositions, cultures from Asia, the Arab world, and the Americas were displayed like zoos, including the Philippines and Japanese people. We were displayed as anthropological oddities. And it was that idea of anthropology and ethnology with a colonial standpoint that I think the National Museum of Ethnology now stands as a corrective and as a necessary corrective.
はい。で、この万国博覧会というもの自体が、アジアや、中東、アフリカといった非西洋諸国の人々を、動物園のように展示するっていうものでもありました。で、その視点に対して、その視点を正そうというような意味合いも、この民泊にはあるのかなと思います。Okay.
World expositions showed cultures from the Orient and from the Africas as colonial, as colonial properties, as primitive, as exotic, as strange, as barbaric. And now at the National Museum of Ethnology, it's very critical of that presentation and avoids it. It's very careful, and it presents cultures as dynamic and as and with dignity, with general sense of dignity.
で、そういった形で、万国博覧会が、示していたその植民地主義的な視点に対して、この民泊はクリティカルな視点を持って展示していますというのは、その、非西洋諸国、東洋とか、アフリカっていうのを野蛮で原始的なものとして描くのではなくて、そのダイナミズムとか、尊厳ですね、を大切にというか、起点に、展覧会が組まれているように、展覧会が構成されているように感じます。Okay.
Its displays are organized still by continent, but far from what you would usually expect in a museum, it raises very interesting issues. Like, for example, Europe is shown as a place where the idea of labor and industry emerged, and the rise of the bourgeoisie as a class society. And it also tackles the issue of immigration in Europe today, where people drown in the Mediterranean because Europe does not accept refugees. It presents um, a dynamic and up to date view of culture that I think is not present in many museum collections in other countries.
で、この民泊では、一応、そのセグメントは、各大陸に分かれて、セグメントしてあるんですけども、例えば現在の移民問題であるとか、こう、現在進行形の、人類のこう歩みとか移動についても言及してあって、で、そういった視点は、そんなに多くの博物館で行われていることではないと思います。
Okay. We can even trace this to the very idea of a museum. The idea of a museum started as a collection of colonial trophies, beauty, and acquisitions, interesting acquisitions, or curiosities. So that's how museums started. They were private, usually imperial collections from its various colonies.
はい。で、ミュージアム、その博物館っていうものの起源について考えたときに、それらは、脅威の好奇心の部屋、脅威の部屋とかって呼ばれたりもするんですけど、つまり、植民地で、自国とか、自分の大陸とは別の大陸に行って集めてきたものとかを展示するっていうのを、まあ、個人とか、そのすごい裕福な人たちが自分たちの富を見せるために始まったものでもありました。OK。
Okay. So this is why, for example, in many important museums like the British Museum, there's a call to repatriate stolen artifacts from different cultures. But here at the Minpaku, the artifacts are shown. Well, first it questions the idea of what is art, what is artifact, what is the difference. It also shows for each artifact it collects, it shows the maker. Like if there is a name that they can find, they name who made the artifact. They show who collected the artifact, when it was collected, and yeah, and usually in museums it's all about the oldest, most representative artifact. But here, there are old artifacts from the recent past, and there are also replicas, and they all coexist because it's not really the valorization of the object as something of value, but really of what it represents and what it reveals about culture.
で、この民泊、例えば、大英博物館、イギリスの大英博物館のように、作品略奪問題、その過去に大英博物館が収集したものが、収集された国から返還を求められるというようなことがあるんですけど、まあ、この民泊に関しては、民泊にある作品が、誰によって作られたのか、いつ収集されたのかっていうことがまあ明示されてあって、で、まあ、そもそもアートとそのアーティファクト、まあ、民芸品とか工芸品とかも含めた、もう少し広い意味での人間が作り出したものっていうのに対して、そのいろんな作り手の情報とか情報を収集されていると同時に、それらは、まあ、既存の博物館の作品の権威とか、誰が、この国がいかに高価なものを持っているんだっていうことではなくて、それぞれの人類が作り出したものの、コンテクストとか、そういうその全体を 伝えるためにこう展示されているように感じます。OK。
Okay. So I think to end, a good example of the museum's perspective on art and artifacts are two totem poles that you can see. Let me adjust. So this is one totem pole that was gifted to the museum from Canada. I think this was around 50 years ago during the time of the expo. And usually in museum collections, it's about the preservation of the precious artifact. But here, the totem pole is degrading because it's left outdoors. Normally, a museum would put it indoors and try to preserve it. But in the culture where these totem poles came from, they are really just left to be weathered and to rot and to be destroyed outside. So instead of restoring it, they just let it degrade as it would be in that culture. And what they did instead was raise funds to commission a new one. So this is a new totem pole that was made for the anniversary of the Minpaku, and now it stands outside the museum in front of the old one. So it shows the dynamism of culture and a respect for the culture where it originates from. And also, I guess, the idea of not just preservation, but letting things wither naturally. The necessary disappearance or a transitoriness, which is something we don't associate with museums because museums are always about permanence. So so this kind of progressive view on culture is the reason why the Minpaku is one of my favorite museums now. And I feel also that it is one of the important and positive legacies of the expo. The theme of progress and harmony for mankind is being reshaped here in this museum as a corrective to the cultural violence that world expositions and imperialism in general um, have inflicted on peoples of the world.
はい。で、この、まず、民泊の外に展示してあるトーテンポールについてなんですけど、トーテンポールは、カナダの、イヌイットたちが作っているものとして、ものです。で、それらが万博、70年万博の頃に寄贈されたものが、今、後ろに見えているものなんですけど、普通、博物館っていうのは、保存することを目的にしている、第一に考えているので、屋外に展示するっていうことは、あんまりなかったりします。で、これは、木材なので、屋外に展示すると風化したりとか、経年変化が、自然に起こるんですけども、その経年変化も含めて、展示してあります。っていうのは、トーテンポール自体が外で、屋外で雨風にさらされて用いられるものだからです。で、そういった本来の博物館、通常の博物館のあり方とはちょっと違うけれども、本来の文化を、尊重しているように尊重して展示されているっていうことに関しても、この民泊が、カールが今すごい、すごいお気に入りの博物館であるっていうゆえんです。OK。
Okay. That's it. Do you have a question? That
はい、
was
質問
challenging.
はあり
Thank
ます
you.
か？Yeah,
The new totem pole was made in 2020,
OK。
and the old one was
と、
1977.
で、2020年に作られたトーテンポールが今、 もう一方で展示されていたものです。で、こうやって新しいのが寄贈されたりっていうのもあります。
Okay, now we're heading to the last site.
So now I'm wondering I think Carl's talk has like two dimensions to explaining for the Filipino artists from the explaining from the scratch for the Filipino artists, Filipino audience, and also like deeper, like your insight for like both the second Filipino audiences. Kenji, how do you feel that? Is that a bit too informative discourse at the beginning?
I think it's okay
It's
because
okay.
yeah, because audience in Japan, they are in the exhibition venues
Mhm.
and they're next to the artworks of Carl, and they want to know more about it, about the artwork.
Yeah,
And-
sure.
So some,
Mhm.
of course, some information could be indirect, but still it help to understand artworks more.
Mhm.
Actually, that's something I
and-
was struggling with. Because on the one hand, I feel like I was supposed to talk about my residency output, but also I feel like it's a tour of the expo park.
Yeah.
So there are things that I can talk about in the expo park that are not directly related to my exhibition, although they are part of the same
Mhm.
push, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's okay because
Okay.
we can ask any questions, right? So
Yes,
if
we
they
can
want
ask
to
any
know
question.
something, then yeah, we will. Especially if I feel something, some important information missing, then maybe I will make some fake question so that
Sure.
Right.
and that would be support, kind of support the conversation.
Maybe to connect it, I could say something like there's a jeepney and a terno in
Mm.
the Minpaku collection representing the Philippines.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Also, like I want to put the one additional element for the talk,
Okay.
walk and talk is that when you arrive the expo park, and so tomorrow is Saturday, so will be a bit more people, a bit more crowded, but still,
Really?
yeah, but it's still, like few people in the park, right? And also, like when you walk at the park, how to say, like it's actually, we could evoke the people that it was very, very crowded in 1970. So you
Right.
could mention about it, like how it was crowded,
Right. Because
and
it was,
yeah,
I could say something like, and it's in my notes that the Osaka Expo had a record attendance of 63 million people. And it was the most well-attended expo for 40 years.
Yeah.
And it was only in 2010 that its record was broken by Expo Shanghai, which had a
I see.
record attendance of 73 million.
Okay, but it's still quite impossible because if compared to China, even just like 10 million difference, right? So it's crazy. So
and it was in 2010, flying was
I
easier and cheaper.
I asked my
Yeah,
mom, and she said she visited 7 times.
Okay.
Quite a lot.
7 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's also the meaning of like we actually walk at the Expo Park. But now, like
Okay.
for Osaka, the people who lives in Osaka, like we never imagined that
That there were millions of people
how do
here.
you say, like it's just like my opinion, but I'm sure that the most of the people think like that. The Expo Park is already Expo Park when we were born, right? So
Right.
we think that this park is a park. Like it's not the trace of the Expo. I mean, we
I
know
see.
it, but we don't see it like that. So you could
Okay.
evoke that to explain
Sure.
it.
I can also show pictures.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think that Shotaro, you can make some, how can I say,
Questions.
yeah, your thoughts. You can share your thoughts too during
Okay. Yeah.
yeah this talk event.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Maybe this is a better view of Minpaku, but I can't show the totem poles. Whew. Okay, something I do plan to do is take a break. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna say like, so near the Philippine Pavilion site, there's a set of vending machines where you can get, refreshments. So I will get my favorite refreshment here. Well, one of. Hmm. So join me as I buy a drink. First, you drop in the coins and you choose, and it drops out.
Yeah. Right.
And my change. Okay, so this is one of my favorite drinks here. It's water that's white peach flavored, which is, I guess, like a peach but subtler. So it's very refreshing.
Irohasu.
I guess we should translate that also.
Oh, should I?
Yeah, because I'm gonna be doing this
イロ
tomorrow.
ハスです。で、桃のフレーバーが少しかかってて、すごい、リフレッシュできます。
Okay. So behind me, somewhere there, used to stand the Philippine Pavilion.
はい。で、背後に見えるのがフィリピンパビリオンです。で、これがフィリピンパビリオン、フィリピンパビリオン跡です。で、ここにもともとフィリピンパビリオンが立っていました。OK。
It was one of the smallest pavilions in the expo, but we sent in one of the biggest delegations of people.
で、これは、フィリピンパビリオンは、単独のパビリオンの中では一番小さなパビリオンだったんですけども、一番その中でも、その規模の割にはすごい大きな人が来た、たくさん人が来たと言われています。
So the smaller pavilions were actually clustered around here in the center of the expo because it's a lower lying land and it's close to the water feature, so it can't have too much weight. The bigger pavilions were surrounding the expo.
で、パビリオン、全体の構成としては、パビリオンの小さなパビリオンが真ん中にあって、で、大きなパビリオンが周囲を覆うように作られていました。
Let me adjust it again. I'll walk you. towards Philippine Pavilion. Right. Oops.
は
Plant.
い、では、フィリピンパビリオンまで歩いていきます。
So that marker there
Ah.
is where it stood.
あそこに見える、なんて言ったっけ。しるべが、フィリピンパビリオンの跡地になります。
So here you can see a marker
こちらです。
which had some information about the pavilion. And there is a marble plaque which says Philippine Pavilion, and the size of the pavilion, 1,634 meters squared.
で、サイズが書いてあって、で、この横の標識に、情報が書いてあります。
There. So this is our last spot. And this is too low. Wait, I'll try. We should sit on the bench. There, okay. Oops. There, okay. Is that a good view? So, I forgot what I was gonna say. Okay, so something like Philippine Pavilion was designed by Leandro Locsin, our national artist for architecture.
フィリピンパビリオンはレアンドロ・ロクシンという、フィリピンを代表する建築家によって建てられました。
And he was also the designer or the architect of the Cultural Center of the Philippines complex.
彼は、フィリピン、Can you say the CPO? Right?
CCP,
CCP,
Cultural
CCP.
Center of the Philippines.
CCP という、フィリピンカルチャーセンターの、建築家でもあります。
Okay, and so it's important to understand that the expo happened in 1970, and so the Philippine participation happened during the second term of Ferdinand Marcos.
で、1970年で、その、マルコスの頃に、そのカルチャーセンターも建てられました。Okay.
It happened that year in 1970 was very important. It was earlier in that year, there were massive student demonstrations throughout the country, especially in Manila. So it was called the First Quarter Storm of 1970. And this student movement was very important in the sense that, number one, it was one of the cited reasons why Marcos declared martial law 2 years later. But it was the First Quarter Storm also laid the groundwork for the people's resistance, the secret people's resistance that challenged the dictatorship, which eventually led to the EDSA People Power Revolution in 1986.
はい。で、この1970年っていうのはフィリピンにとってもすごい、重要な年で、この年に、 それまでで一番大きな学生運動がありました。マニラを中心に大きな学生運動がありました。で、それはマルコス独裁政権のその軍事政権下、戒厳令下において、に対抗する大きな運動の一つでした。で、その後、1986年までその70年が一番大きな、対抗運動でした。OK。
Okay. I think this is better. So coming here is like dealing with several different strands of the Marcos dictatorship. I'm dealing with 1970 and the People's Resistance, but also directly I'm dealing with the cultural facade that was established by the Marcos administration. Locsin
The-
Cultural Center of the
sorry, I
Philippine
think,
Complex.
oh, sorry, could you cut a bit more
Sure.
shorter
Okay, I'll cut
sentences?
more.
I think it's
Okay,
not possible for, yeah.
okay.
まず1970、ここに来ることっていうのは、その1970年の民衆の対抗運動を思うことでもありますし、で、その後の、Sorry, can you repeat it again? Yeah.
Sorry. Coming here to the Expo Park is dealing with two different facets of the Marcos dictatorship. One is the People's Resistance, of which 1970 was an important year, but also and dealing with the cultural facade that the Marcos has created.
で、ここに来ることっていうのは、マルコスの2つの、事例を思い起こさせます。それは1970年のマルコスの戒厳